Okay, so welcome to everybody, those here who are here for the live session and just arriving, and of course those who are going to be watching the on-demand recording as well. This is the fifth of our Twilight Conversations for conference this year, and this one is very much one where we're going to be letting the making do the talking. We are indebted to the Crafts Council for pulling together just a wonderful group this afternoon. And it's all about, in fact, Make First, which is the Crafts Council's craft education pedagogy. As an approach, it's one that we're big fans of here at NSEAD because it really empowers learners to make their ideas instead of sketching them, encourage them to use malleable materials and to really test and develop their thinking. So I'm delighted to welcome Rebecca Goozee from the Crafts Council, teacher and technician Rose Russell, and STEM policy expert Florian Fidenion, and artist Liaqat Rasul, who are going to guide us this afternoon and help us to really understand how the Make First approach can help teachers create the necessary space for learners to develop their voices and to really identify as makers. So that's what it's all about. And I think a good place to begin would be with the concept, in fact. So my absolute pleasure to introduce our good friend, Rebecca Goozee. Rebecca is an education manager for the Crafts Council, where she works with educational provisional to develop craft practice in the classroom. And she has a long time been an active advocate for creative education and done some amazing research exploring the ways public sector organisations can explore making with learners. And it's always a joy to work with you, Rebecca, particularly recently on the Crafts Council's Craft School Yinkers Challenge, which Rebecca leads. And I've got to say, I had the absolute joyous job recently of joining the judging panel for that. So thank you, Rebecca. Over to you to explain what Make First is all about.
Well, that's a terrifying prospect. I'm going to share my screen and hopefully take you on a bit of a ride with me. I think in the spirit of Make First as well, I'm going to go off script, which is very unlike me. So I'm going to start with introducing what Yinkers Challenge was, or what Yinkers Challenge is. So about a year ago, we launched Craft School Yinkers Challenge for all education provisions that provided education for Key Stage 1 to Key Stage 4, with the hope that we would get about 10 hours worth of activity in the classroom, of craft making activity in the classroom for every participating school. We partnered with Yinka Alori, who is this absolute megastar of a designer, artist, craftsperson, who is so committed to young people and their creative development, that he came to us with the idea that he wanted to be able to do something that had a far wider reach. And so this is where it was kind of born. And so we worked with him to develop 3 briefs that explored play, storytelling and empowerment, and asked the schools that registered to allow their learners to select a brief and to respond creatively to it. That sounds all lovely. It was very well received. We had about 120 schools sign up in total, about 100 entries from students and groups of students, and we had over 750 students participating this year, which is not bad for a first year through. But working with Yinka, and one of the really nice things that we were able to do, because his work speaks so well of that ability for makers to commit to storytelling in their work, to commit to exploring their cultural identities, their communities, their histories, and having it as a place to celebrate. We were also able to underpin all of this work with NSEAD's anti-racist checklist, which is a phenomenal piece of work. And if you haven't looked at it already, you definitely should, because we were then able to guide schools into delivering anti-racism through craft work, which is a wonderful thing to be able to do. And Yinka's work was certainly a point where we felt like it was strong enough to be able to show those themes of empowerment through his work and pass those on to anybody who was doing this practice. Alongside this, however, because we wanted, basically, because we're Crafts Council Education Programmes is all about getting craft making in the classroom, we also came up with a pedagogical framework that we've quite affectionately called Make First. Make First is exactly what you expect it to be. We want learners and young people to be forming their ideas with materials immediately. We want them to be given the brief and given the materials, and then we want them to develop their skills through interaction with materials. It's really easy to do this with malleable materials, so cards, clays, papers, textiles, where, and a lot of reclaimed materials as well, where students can take low risk kind of risks with their work and be able to develop, tweak, tinker their ideas based on how the materials respond. It's a practice that a lot of teachers have in their own classroom, and they would recognise that they would do it. It also is a way in which that we can ensure that the making is happening pretty consistently. So we really encourage that that making is used for idea development, that making is used for testing ideas to make sure that they work, and for evaluation. So it works in all three ways where the materials become central. Now, this is really important to me personally, because that's how I feel that what the power of craft actually is. The power of craft actually is about that embodied experience with materials. It allows you to understand who you are. It allows you to tell your stories. It becomes an object that is about a moment in time in your life that is something that then becomes a real tacit object that represents who you are. And that's what we want for all young people in the classroom. We do know that obviously making, art, design, craft are all under threat in schools from prolonged educational policy that has seen them driven out of curriculums or driven out of the prominence within curriculums that they deserve. And so this is kind of an antidote to that. It also was developed in mind with non-specialist teachers. That means that we knew that we wanted primary school teachers specifically to be able to go, okay, I don't need to know how to show a student how to solder. I don't need to know how to be able to slab build from clay. I can go in there and allow the children to experiment and develop their knowledge, and my knowledge will follow their knowledge. And these are on the screen, these are the principles of what Make First is. So Make First embraces that repetition, the starting again, the leaving a piece of work, to coming back to it, to working on several things at once. It's not about having a linear path through the process. It's not about having an idea or having a problem, researching the problem, having the idea, modelling the idea, remodelling the idea, and then making a final product. It should be learner driven, based on their own interests, and the learners should feel empowered to make their own decisions about their work that will shape their work. And that gives them the opportunity to develop their voice as craftspeople. It also is a place for failure. We expect a lot of the makers who do this kind of work, the learners who do this kind of work, to fail often and keep going. We want that resilience. We know that they don't have a lot of time to be making in schools, so therefore we need to build in a mechanism that will allow them to build their resilience towards failure. Because if we go on that linear pathway, if their idea doesn't turn out exactly as they want it to from their design work, they may never pick up that material or that technique ever again. So it's again about that empowering. And the most important thing about it is that it should be joyful. It should be a pleasure, and it should be really exciting for the young people. Now, I am not one to sit back and to not get involved. So I have, over the last year, explored different ways of engaging with Make First in workshops, within schools, within other cultural institutions, working with specialist craft makers, as a way to experiment actually how this works. And as you can see from the responses on the screen, it can be very different. The image right in the centre here, I've actually taught a really technical skill. I taught a Key Stage 2 group how to build an electronic circuit with conductive paint, LEDs and a battery, and then I've asked them to light up a city that they have made. I did this by scaffolding the learning, so I took maybe 10 minutes to demonstrate what to do. Before then I let them go and then explore what the electricity and the conductivity of everything kind of meant to their models. And I can tell you now that there was a lot of LEDs taped to batteries stuck onto pieces of work, because they figured out that they could get around drawing a circuit, but still had that tacit engagement, that embodied engagement with a concept that they'd never been able to experience before. So I wasn't particularly mad at it. Also, you can see that there's two pictures where I've got pre-built models, pre-built, prefabricated pieces for model building. The group that was working on this had a lot of additional needs, especially around handling textures and not wanting to be involved with clays. So this was a really good way of still allowing them to access that activity and that Make First, but in an environment that they felt they were happy with, which was wonderful. And then the two on the outside, so the first one and the third one, these are actually pieces that were made with a maker. Very recently we went up to Leeds and we asked students to make a coral reef out of reclaimed materials. It was the most wonderful experience. I was up there for 3 days. We put on about, I think it was 10 workshops in total, 11 workshops. No response was the same. Everyone selected and chose their materials differently, and everybody throughout that time also responded really differently to the brief. The best part though, so we were with those students for 2 hours. We probably did about 15 minutes of kind of explaining the task, talking about the materials, talking about what a coral reef was. The rest of the hour and 45 minutes, the students were in complete flow where they were making. There was not one student in the sessions that I was in that had to be taken out, was disruptive, that was disrespectful of the materials. What was really nice as well, we allowed them to either work individually or in a team, and they could self-select what that was. And the amount of times that I saw somebody who'd been working on their own, was happy with where they'd got to, but didn't think that theirs was maybe big enough, move into a group, and then watching that group try to integrate their work into what they was doing. Collaboration can happen at any point in the making cycle, and that really proved to me how and where that would happen. Key Stage 3 and 4 workshops can be, whereas for Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2, this can be quite a fun activity, really joyful. If you are looking to build skills, I would say that this is a place where you can, Make First is still a place that you can explore. The Euston Arch, this was probably my favourite task. I gave a group of students a lot of historical documents with some measurements on them, and asked them to scale down based on the measurements that they had and recreate Euston Arch. And this is one of the responses. Without any instruction, without any demonstration, without any, I'm going to show you how to work this maths out first. There was a formula given to them, and they were let go. And it was a year 8 class, and this was one of the results. Likewise, for image number 5, we can see that on the table there's actually a a diagram for the learners to follow, and this is in Rose's school. This was one of the first ones I did, where I gave them a choice of materials and said, you need to make this, needs to be solid, have a go. And I didn't give any instructions, didn't give any demonstrations, and just watched them work it out for themselves. I think this was the point for me as well, that I realised the power of this, because I didn't really do much talking, but when the students figured out how to do it, they told each other. The communication across the tables I found quite phenomenal, in terms of like just how they were so willing to help themselves. And the structure at the bottom, number 4, I find really fascinating, because it's an upside down structure. So it's the support comes from the top rather than from the bottom. I was delivering an architectural workshop, architectural model workshop, and we kind of briefly spoke about this as a concept, as a way to, you know, withstand force. The students weren't shown what this would look like. However, this is the concept that they came up with, and it withstood the most force out of anybody else's models. And again, it was something that I didn't show them what to do. I just said to them, you need to make something that is this high, that you need to needs to withstand as much force as possible, and that's the results that you get. However, all of those workshops happened within a short amount of time, so we're looking at maybe like between an hour and 3 hours at most. So that all of that making from across all of those year groups, maximum of 3 hours making, which is really impressive considering how far they got and the diversity of responses, and also how technical some of their responses were. Just think that if you take the training wheels off, the students just surprise you, and they surprised me. I was always ready to jump in to say, oh no, we can rethink this. However, I never really needed to, which I found wonderful. So to go back to Yinka's challenge, because they had a longer amount of time to do this kind of activity, we see a much more sophisticated response. You can see these are final entries for Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2, and you can see the level of detail and the refinement that has gone on through this practice is quite astonishing, just through being given that time and being given that space. And likewise, you see the leap from Key Stage 1 to Key Stage 2 to Key Stage 3 and Key Stage 4, where you start having really very large installations, ambitious installations become part of what the students are producing. And I just found it absolutely fascinating to look at that difference that time can take, and the different responses that you can get. But I don't really want this to be all in my voice. I wanted to leave you with quotes that the learners provided me. So my favourite from this is, Yinka Ilori inspired me with his positive text and colourful designs. His patterns connect me with the way that his ideas are based on African culture and Nigerian background. I can relate to this because my culture is from Cape Verde and Guinea. Oh, I can't, I'm going to pronounce that really badly. Bissau. I wanted to experiment with the idea of making positive messages in a colourful way around the school. How wonderful is that? And also, the teachers also said that it had a significant impact on their classroom practice. I've been able to give the learners much more creative freedom and access to techniques and materials I've never used before. It has allowed me to consider the process rather than the finished product more carefully, and to be learning alongside the students all the time. And I think that's rather wonderful. Just to let you know that this is we are running it again next year, so if you want to get involved, you can click on the link. And if we're actually having a launch event on the 7th of July, which is completely free, CPD event, and so you can register for that. And also it's going to go into an exhibition. We're taking the winners' work, it's going to be put into an exhibition over the summer, and we'll have a whole summer full of playful making. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to me.
Oh, thank you so much, Rebecca. Joy and excitement are two words that stick with me from there. And I love the idea of low risk. That I want some low risk. But seriously, I mean, the work you've been doing to champion haptic learning is so empowering. And it's so relevant, isn't it, to this sort of pandemic generation of learners who had such a disembodied experience of education. Just wonderful. Thank you so much. Because we know it works, and actually here to tell us how, I'd like to introduce to you Rose Russell and Florian Fidenion. Let me start with Rose. Rose is an art and D&T technician at the Ursuline Academy in Ilford. She is a multi-award winner who has dedicated her personal time to leading STEM Club and championing extracurricular activities since 2010. And she's absolutely changed perceptions and stereotypes and aspirations for girls of all ages. She's led many through national science and engineering competitions. And you know, she's really made this a key part, in fact, of school improvement at her school. And in fact, after 12 years of this work, the school was awarded the STEM Learning Outstanding STEM Club of the year 2022. Quite an achievement. And here with Rose, I'm delighted that we've got Florian Fidenion with us. I met Florian earlier this year, in fact, at the CHEED conference up in Newcastle, where she was leading a really challenging and amazing workshop around the excellent work that she'd been doing with the haptic all-party parliamentary group. Work which I've got to say I've been following closely. That was in her previous role as Head of Industry, Technology and Innovation at Policy Connect. Florian is now a consultant, she's a science communicator, and she's very much leading innovative thinking in the STEM field. And it all began at the Ursuline Academy, I believe, where Florian was herself a student, is that right? It was really certainly good, Florian, to hear you talk, to address Rose as Miss Russell. So that told me a lot. But let me hand over to you to tell us all about your work. And I think, Rose, are you going to share screen, or are you?
Yes.
Yeah, grand.
Oops, oh, then I've gone back to the, let's put that back to the beginning. A few slides there. Oops, where are we? No, back to the beginning. Apologies, sorry. Okay, yes, so thank you for having me today. It's really lovely to be here. As you've mentioned, my name's Rose Russell. I'm the Art and Design and Technology Technician, Instructor and STEM Coordinator at the Ursuline Academy, Ilford School. I've kind of been there 30 years, seen a lot of changes. And when I was approached by this, I was asked to say a little bit about the importance of making, and a little bit about the STEM work that I've done as a STEM coordinator. And as a technician, thinking about making in school, one of our key roles is to support teachers in their drive to raise the quality of design and technology education and make it more exciting and appealing to our young people. So one of the things, most important things is about resourcing materials to offer students to make high quality prototypes and products. I think it was back in June, I think we got an email from Rebecca to ask would we be interested in running a workshop about actually not using materials, but actually for students to make their own materials. I believe Rebecca is one of the few instructors or teachers who delivers this workshop, and of course we snapped at the opportunity, especially as the pandemic put a lot of restrictions to our plans. So as you can see in the photos there, Rebecca came, I think it was in late September, October, and delivered her own workshop where the girls actually made their own materials. There's a bit here, I think, where Rebecca was actually showing us about how to make the materials. And as they say, you cannot be what you can't see. And it's great when we have people coming in to actually deliver things like this and to show students that, you know, these things are real and it can be done. That was a great session. And the girls were really taken aback by that. They actually went away, did their own, made their own materials from this. And as a technician, it's really important for me to think about the new emerging technologies and obviously the new materials that we have coming onto the market. So of course we've got graphene, as you can see, there's a list of things here, metal forms and titaniums, liquid crystal displays. And so it was really good to have Rebecca come in and deliver a workshop. And consequently from that, we were able to have that was actually our first kind of interactions after 2 years of not doing anything due to the pandemic. We were actually invited to the building centre and they had to make their own models from there. Now, again, of course, resourcing the DT curriculum with things that can help the making process more enjoyable. As you can see, there's lots of things I've got to think about to bring the workshop to life. Sourcing smart materials here is another one. I'm just going to quickly go all through these things. I mean, we've got a new thing called e-textiles, and obviously that's really related to textiles material. But as a technician, I have to think about how can we incorporate that into the making of things. And as you can see, we've actually taken a textiles thing and put it into paper and card. And there you are. We've made their own kind of lighting things. And again, we've got different materials to help the baking process. Because obviously when the girls come into the room, as much as, you know, we have to cover the theory, they come in here because they actually want to make products. Now, how do you sustain 2 times 24, which equals 48 students, GCSE, which is really 40% of 120 form entry, pretty high. How do you sustain that numbers? Obviously celebrating achievements. As you can see, we use every opportunity to promote and build the profile of the subject. As you can see here, it's a constant sales pitch every time. And of course, we did a project on, inspired by the Design Museum actually, on this sneakers project. And now, of course, I'm going to come back very quickly to how my STEM career developed. It's 10 years since I started a STEM club back in 2010, almost 12 years. And it just shows the impact of having role models and people coming in. This was our first engagement of a STEM ambassador. Actually, he was the president of the ICE. And this young lady here, I think that was my first cohort, is actually gone in, I think, to be becoming an architect, all done from actually, as you can see, the materials, making a model of a sustainable stadium. And as a result, talking about impacts on students, you know, as it's been mentioned, we've had a string of winning awards and meeting really important people. Like you can see Princess Anne there, David Cameron, and talking about Floriane, a former student of ours. I think when we talk about role models, she was actually inspired by taking part in our STEM activities. And we have to the left here, a young lady called Uwande Akinola, now an MBE, but a very influential lady. I think I'm right in saying she might come back and say yes or no about that. But I asked Uwande to come into school to help our young ladies with their project. And I think that was the key thing for Floriane into why she went into engineering. So what's really been the impact on our students? Well, I think, you know, they've had fantastic opportunities taking part in the first STEMET's Outbox Incubator, learning how to become entrepreneurs. We've had people making apps, meeting people like Labour MP Stella Creasy there. You can see that. Young people as young as year 9 getting the opportunity to actually go into Cambridge University and talk about their experiences here. And of course, as we celebrate International Women's and Engineering Day today, young, you know, we can see how young these young ladies are, getting the opportunity to actually go into the headquarters in Crossrail and to meet the director there. As a result of that, we've had opportunities to have work experiences, and we were very lucky. I mean, we have very traditional views of academics, and it was very hard to probably push this one, but we actually got our first civil engineer apprentice, and that was back in 2016. And again, I think Florian was involved in this. We, out of the president of the IET, wanted to do something for her first year, and out of 9 pupils that were chosen nationally, 2 of ours, and Florian was included in that. And again, I think that's been quite influential in her career. And of course, yes, we've had students go on to achieve fantastic things here, of competitions. Florian actually led this one, and we actually won a makeover of the classroom for £1,000. We've had girls going on to all expensive paid trips to America, celebrating the Grace Hopper celebration there. And of course, somebody, you know, getting an opportunity through her STEM work, being invited to the Queen's Garden Party. I mean, Florian came to me and said, "Miss, I'd like you to come along with me." And I remember her saying, "What about your parents?" But she said, no, she wanted me to come along. So that was really lovely of her to have thought about that. But again, it is raising the profile of the subject and using all the opportunities that we have to, obviously, you know, with the imminent demise of the subject now, we've got to do everything that we can. Coming back to the importance of role models, 2010 I was out there looking for role models, and now we have our own homegrown role models actually coming back into school and inspiring our younger students here. So as I'm just giving some examples, I think we had one, I don't know if anybody watched the Alan Carr interior design show. There's one of our students, she's going to actually come back into the school and give a talk. And so you can see the vast impact that we've had. Florian recently has come into our school. She's been a STEM ambassador and has helped our girls. Actually, we were at Big Bang, and through her work that she's been doing with them, they actually got to the finals, and they are now in the finals of a Design for London competition, which they're going to present their project to the Sadiq Khan, the Lord Mayor, not the Mayor, the Mayor of London, in the middle of July. So as a result of this, we have, as a school, won lots of competitions. It is building the profile. It's keeping it's a survival of the subject, to be honest. As you can see, there's a string of things: teacher awards, technician awards, department awards. My head of department actually won the Big Bang's Teacher of Awards in Birmingham yesterday. So awards don't matter really, do they? Until you get one, as they say. And I didn't realise that I was the first person at school to have won a national award. But more importantly for me, it's really seeing the impact of students' faces when they receive their own award, you know, and it just inspires them to, well, you know, to think about outside the box, the confidence that they bring, they build. Yeah, it's vast. The skills that they've learned, team building, all very important. And of course, when I think about continual professional development, it's things like this, the network that you bring, and the opportunities that you can then bring back into the school has been very important. I mean, we enter a lot of competitions, and I've put here Dare to Dream. So how do you measure the impact from the last almost 12 years? Well, someone once told me, Rose, you enter a lot of competitions. And my answer to them was, well, if you want to raise standards, you either enter one or you set one up yourself. And it's great to get student testimonials here. I mean, one student just recently sent me something. She said, I want you to say a big thank you to you and your department. I know that I would have never been able to achieve any of this without the department's ambition, passion and opportunities. All work that you do is very appreciated. So I get lots of things like that. And it's really, really lovely to hear that whatever we're doing, you know, it's having an impact and that they value it. So as when I was asked to do this, I didn't realize that I had done so much, and this is a reflection of the last 12 years, and it's really coming back full circle, and every one of these pictures tells a story. And as I said to the girls yesterday, no matter what happens, awards, as much as it is lovely to bring something back, you know, it's not the be and end all, because you'll be speaking about this story for years to come. So just coming back to this, as you notice, a British actor here, Tom Hiddleston. He's a great actor. And it was something I was reading recently about what he said. And it really struck home to the things that I've done. And he said, you never know what's around the corner. It could be anything or it could be nothing. You keep putting one foot in front of the other. And then one day you look back and you've climbed a mountain. Now, in 2017, I actually celebrated a milestone birthday, and I went back to St. Lucia, and thank you, there should have been another slide here, and I actually did climb one of the mountains there. But what that showed me was that, you know, it's a message that we always tell our young girls here, that you can achieve anything you want to as long as you put your mind to it. And I think yesterday's experience and everything that's happened this week, actually, it's been quite phenomenal. I mean, we're going to have it in our newsletter, but we had a Teen Tech winner on Monday. We had She Can winners on Monday. We had my head of department winning the best teacher of the year at the Big Bang. And it just shows the girls. I mean, this afternoon, while we're celebrating International Women's Day, we had, I think, about 20 girls come in to sign up for the STEM club. We're not going to be able to entertain them, but you know, what a day to have that you know, to show that impact. They've seen their peers win these awards or making something of it, and it's great to see. So I'm going to leave this. Thank you very much. I'm going to pass this over to Floriane now, if that's okay. Is that okay? Yes.
Sounds good.
Yes.
Are you all good to shall we just?
Yes. Oh.
Yeah, we'll just swap screen.
Yeah. Is that okay? Boss? Yes, that's
There we go.
Thank you.
Awesome. I'm hoping everyone can see that okay.
Yeah.
I'll keep it fairly short because I think, Ms. Russell, you've covered a good part of it. The first slide for me is just an illustration of all of the things that I've done sort of from that first STEM club engagement with Ms. Russell have culminated in quite a diverse portfolio of activities. And what I wanted to highlight is what's really key is that a lot of the skills I rely on now are things that I initially developed through this really safe space, which the STEM club was, which was an opportunity to take ideas from first principles and theory and to create real life examples and projects in a way that you just don't get to do in traditional classroom learning. And that's kind of the core thing that it's always come back to. All of the roles and kind of opportunities that I've taken, they've been in different forums, they've been in different contexts. I mean, I'm here with a completely different hat today. I've engaged with NT and Crafts Council as a policy consultant. I've worked with young people as a STEM ambassador. Like there's so many different roles that you can pick up, but those skills that you initially develop, that confidence, that empowerment that comes from being able to learn in the sort of environment that Ms. Russell and the department at Erskine have created over the number of years. And you can see that in the diversity of where the students end up. So without me knowing it, what got me into engineering is that we were embedding these first principles into our projects. We were experimenting we were doing what felt right based on our knowledge, based on what we were learning at the time, based on talking to role models and STEM ambassadors who gave us nuggets of information that we then pulled back together. And that sort of safety net and that low risk that Rebecca spoke about earlier, that's what makes people think, okay, well, I'm going to create this completely crazy idea that doesn't really make a lot of sense, but I'm going to give it a go anyway, because, you know, I care about climate change, or I care about diversity, and I want to see a solution. And that's kind of what happens now when I work with the young girls in the STEM club. Currently, they have that same sort of thought process where they give things a try, they come up with really out there ideas. Some of the sketches are almost impossible to decipher at times in terms of what it is they're trying to convey as a concept, but they try because they know it's an environment in which they can do that. And that's something I've always appreciated, and I know the young people who are going through that now are appreciating it, because it's not something they get to do on a day-to-day basis. And what Design and Technology and STEM Club does is gives people an opportunity to take on an iterative design process, almost as if it was natural. There was nothing linear about creating the project that we created. There was nothing linear about what the girls created just last week with their project Presinos. They kind of had, if you look through their 80-slide portfolio, they've got a phase 1 design, they've got a development, they've got research and design, and they've got a phase 2 and then a phase 3. It goes back and forth. And that remodeling and creating new work is what we then apply when we go into industry. And so for me, that's a fundamental skill that everyone should have, regardless of whether they're going into STEM, into crafts, into creative arts, into professional services. So that STEM journey, kind of the effects of this kind of learning is really hard to quantify, but what it really clearly shows is that it creates and empowers a confidence in young people to then go and pursue that, or take what they've learned and pursue that in whatever context. For me, it was engineering. For other peers, it's been in architecture and quantity surveying, in creative arts, in law and history. But they all cite the STEM Club as a starting point, as a point that kind of lit up that inspiration that they had. And when you're in the classroom creating these workshops with young people, especially at the making and building stage, you see a new side to them that I've always really loved. I'm sure Miss Russell saw this when we were putting together, 24 hours before the Big Bang, this greenhouse that we wanted to get out of like a solar glass panel. And we were kind of like, how are we going to pull this together in the time that we have and create this product? And that was just, a high pressure, high stakes situation for us, even though now I look back and think, okay, that was pretty easy. But it's something that you develop at the time, and you see a new side to yourself that you wouldn't have necessarily had a chance to explore until much later down in your career. And so when you do that in Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2 and Key Stage 3, you see that as they have an opportunity to learn and develop in a context that's quite novel, but really, really important, because that's what we do as adults on a day-to-day basis when we're in the world of work. So going back to that big picture, the other thing that translates is the real world context into the things that we study and work, that we go on to study and work in. And having that confidence to fail, to learn and to rely on themselves gives them an opportunity to raise aspirations, gave me an opportunity to raise aspirations. I'm sure for the young people that I've now worked with, as they go forward, they'll have that same confidence. And one thing that really strikes me is that when I got to Warwick and suddenly I was doing this hands-on manufacturing engineering degree that was all about making, how do we get things from concept into people, into consumers' hands? The confidence to handle heavy machinery, tooling, 3D printers, computer-aided design didn't come from the maths and the physics A levels that I had studied, although they were really important because they helped me with the theory. It was the STEM Club and design and technology experience that had helped me to actually be able to tackle those challenges. And especially when we come back to tackling inequalities, schools that don't necessarily have the equipment and the tooling to allow you to do that means that you get to university, and compared to grammar school people or private school people who've had an opportunity to use those tools for a long period of time, they're already way ahead in the game. And actually the context of STEM education and that extracurricular engagement is how you can level that playing field, and it leveled the playing field for me, and I know it will do so for other students. And I think that shows the importance as well also of STEAM and kind of how the two can work hand in hand, because you need that creativity. And these are just a few more examples of kind of where I would go back and think, okay, this is a challenge that I have. What would I have done if I was in Miss Russell's classroom? And so I think to close, really, I'm just emphasizing what Miss Russell said as a real life, I guess, embodiment of the work and the impact that she creates. And I've always said that I don't think I'd be where I would be without the STEM club and without the role models I had and the inspiration I had and the confidence that it helped to build. And just very quickly, kind of going back on putting on the policy hat, when we think about reforms to curriculum and design and innovation education, that is why the work of data, that is why the work of Crafts Council is so important, because you cannot create professionals for industry, whatever industry they go into, without having that well-rounded understanding of both theory and the practical. And often, unfortunately, the practical comes from classroom engagement with design and technology, or with arts, with graphics, with product design. And so those are the subjects where actually you're building up those real life skills. And there are papers out there. There was one last year from the UCL that kind of talked about the lasting impact of STEM engagement. And you can see quite concretely that the data kind of suggests that people who have that STEM engagement go on to engage much more with the STEM sector and develop skills at a much faster pace. And I think that's something we need to consider when we're thinking about how we create a curriculum that is accessible to all, but also helps to create people with the real world skills that we need, especially since we talk about skill shortages all the time now. And I'll finish there.
Wow, thank you, Florian. I want to be a STEMette, definitely. I also think, I think that phrase, what would Miss Russell do in her classroom, is one we all might just take to heart, actually, and ask ourselves whenever we're stuck and wondering what to do. That was fantastic. Thank you so much. You know, how powerful to see how this making philosophy can just break through those subject boundaries, cut through them, and unleash just limitless possibilities. Just amazing. And yeah, to see that 12-year story, Rose, it's quite incredible. It must have been quite moving putting that together, and then hearing from Florian, you know, just what that really means. Thank you so much, both of you. For those people who are watching, hopefully we're going to get time for questions at the end. So if you do have any questions at all for any of our guests this afternoon, please pop them in the Q&A box, and we will try our best to get to them. So we've reached that point in the session where we're going to start having the conversation with our hands and let the making do the talking. We are so lucky to have artist Liaqat Rasul at conference today. Probably the most eloquent introduction I can give to Liaqat's work are actually his own words, so I'm just going to steal those. Making art is an act of hope. Liaqat invites the viewer to experience his low-tech textured works, where our eyes dart about to take in the many elements in their own time, meditatively, diverted from smartphones and the persistent digital world. That's what he tells us he does, and I think we can all do with some of that. He says, think tactile, think analog. So that's what we're going to do. I'm really looking forward to making with you this afternoon, Liaqat. I've got my basket of materials, and I know Rebecca has too, and hopefully folks who are watching, you've got a few materials to hand. So we've got half an hour or so to hear a little bit about your work and to be led through some making with you. Shall we get started?
Yes, hello everybody. My name's Liaqat, and I'm a multimedia and collage artist. And I'm just going to go and show you some examples of my work and get started really. So here we have a collage that I've been working on, and it's probably, is that right? And it's just sort of bits of cardboard and notepaper, corrugated card, a little bit of a post-it, the punched paper from a hole puncher here, an old piece of fabric that I've just glued and bonded onto paper, and various thicknesses of cardboard I really like using as well, and a variety of like bank statements, invoices, receipts, all of those things that have like a print or texture, they really excite me. And anything that has sort of like the printed logo of recycling, they just add further texture. This is an example of something that I would sort of start off with before the stage that I just showed you, which is just creating a composition of sorts. And again, it's kind of playful and it's very kind of ethereal and intuitive. So, and you know, I'll put this away for a few weeks and I'll come back to it. So that's sort of work in progress. This is a technique that I like working on, which is napkins and tissues, because they provide a surface that allows to bleed. So what I do is, so there's some packaging here from, you know, like the paper that chopsticks comes in. So it's got like all this lovely oriental kind of imagery and sort of marks. So I've just glued bits of that onto the tissue and then added other bits of plain paper. And then I don't know whether you can see, but it's sort of, it bleeds on the tissue, but not on the actual normal paper. And I just think that's really beautiful and really inspiring. This is a piece that, again, from the discussions that people have been having this afternoon about being playful and then sort of looking at a technique and thinking, you know, how can I explore that further? So this gold foil, I started using these bits of cardboard as little sort of, I don't know what, little branches, I suppose, colourful branches. And this kind of, this sort of has an architect kind of feel to it as well. And I think that's kind of really important with the playfulness as well of multimedia and collage. There's bits of wood here, there's coffee stirrers. They all have sort of different textures to them. And it is, yeah, exploring materials is a really kind of nice way of doing things. And then I get really detailed and add little bits of stripes to things. But I will probably present that raised off like an inch or so. So it kind of, it could possibly be something like this, or it could possibly go with something like this, you know. And then this is a collage that I mean, this is almost like note sketching or note making 3D kind of. So I'm trying to remember. So this was basically one side, and I really liked all these leftover bits from a previous work. And when I turned it over, I was like, oh, I quite like the back now. And I really enjoyed exploring different parts of the back. And then, so it's really like a two-sided collage. So then you begin to think, well, how can I display this? How can I show it in different ways? So this has become a mood board for future projects now. And again, it's the playfulness at the beginning and letting your subconscious just ride and see what happens. And yes, there will be mistakes, but it's like Rebecca says, it's important to do them. So, and this is a photograph of like one of my artworks that it gets finally sort of realized. And this is something that's quite, I do a series of mobile faces that are hung from a coat hanger. And this has become quite quite an important part of my art practice. So this is about, there's some here actually. See them, probably can't see them, but they're here dangling. And there's about 6 of them. And I just did an exhibition of 6 mobile faces. And it was really curious how people that came to the exhibition responded to them, because it didn't matter what age you were or what kind of person, and everybody responds to an eyes, nose, and a mouth. And I was trying to sort of demonstrate the fact that you know, you don't have to have you know, you don't have to have an ability in art as such to have a go. So, right, so today we're going to make, this is what I made earlier. So it's kind of a mix of textures, a texture board. So I've got a variety, I've got like an old ticket, a traveling ticket, a bit of a lottery ticket, packaging brown paper, some ribbons here that I've just used from recycling paper. Then there's some napkin in the middle, which I've just drawn over in straight lines. I seem to like straight lines a lot. I find it, so I kind of like doing things that are quite mundane, and I just like drawing lines, and it helps me to think and plan stuff. So and then on the edges I've created this sort of like fringing here, and so we're just going to make a start on this. But again, this is sort of, it's sort of playful. I've attached this on the back for this bit because I wanted it to sort of do its own thing. So and you can display it in a variety of ways. Could be a mobile maybe. Right, so the background for the collage, I'm just going to get some bits of paper here, and we're going to start by just getting a ruler and some colour pens and start just colouring in stripes. So we just want to, so if you get like a piece of paper, a receipt, lottery, and a card, and then let's just start drawing some stripes. So to create some texture and to change the kind of the base material a little bit. And you can do one color, or you can do a mix of different colors. And just be whatever, let your hand do the talking, whatever your hand reaches out for color, let's let it be that color. Yeah, I seem to sort of do lots of stripes on my work, and I think there's some sort of cartography, I'm trying to say, element to my brain where I put things in certain spaces, or I think in some way sort of spatially. So what we plan to do is have 4 or 5 bits of these things, and then we're going to create a sort of patchwork background. I was completely inspired by everybody's talk today. It was absolutely beautiful to listen to everybody. I kind of got a bit emotional, I have to say. It was just so lovely.
It was, wasn't it? So
it really was. It's just so important for us to do this and meet together and talk about these things, because even more so after the pandemic, you know, where we've all been away. Yeah, and congratulations to everybody who offers a space for creating.
It's lovely to get a glimpse of your studio in the background.
It's very messy.
Wow, ordered chaos, I think. Ordered chaos.
Whenever anybody comes to visit me, I have lots of studio visits, and everybody loves the mess. And it just, you know, I have this will to clean up, but people don't want me to. So I just think, okay, I'll just leave it with you then.
I think I might apply that principle. I've just got to give it what they want.
So again, this thing with the tissue and just sort of depending on what kind of felt tip you use, they bleed in different sort of ways. But it's nice to sort of feel the tissue and sort of understand how thin it is and understand the qualities of the tissue. And I think different papers create excitement for things. Choose some of the bits. Yeah, I just find this really relaxing, drawing stripes. I really like it.
Very struck by what you said there about your attraction to lines.
Yes.
And how they kind of like create an order in your thinking as you're working.
Yeah.
That's so interesting, especially as well what you were just saying there about talking about risk and feeling able to fail. And there's something about a process where you don't know, you haven't got a planned outcome.
Yeah.
Which is quite, for some people, is quite unsettling, and actually quite a lot of children as well. So there's something in here about you creating a structure of safety with the lines. I'm enjoying that personally.
Well, because I suffer from depression, and sometimes I come into the studio and I just make stuff, and then there always has to be a time where I'm just doing lines, because then I take the pressure off myself, and then whatever I've created become like the elements of a possible kit for a collage that I do in the future. Right, so I think we've got enough things here now so I'm just going to tape the backs really quickly. So we've got create a rectangle for which we can start adding our other elements. So the next thing I need to do is create like a square shape. If you want to cut things in the patchwork and sort of what's quite nice about working quickly like this is the way you're making decisions, because you're not sort of like it's really nice to be able to work quickly. There's something that happens with your brain that's kind of like it doesn't allow you to sophisticate things too much. You have to just crack on.
It becomes intuitive, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it's really
favorite type of creating.
Yeah, and it's sort of
feeling your way through it.
And it makes you realize how much you can achieve in a short space of time. You know, I think we all kind of right, so that's that. And then there's the napkins. That's going to be, so maybe I'll do that.
I think like you, I like straight lines as well when I'm creating, but my favorite is doing big curves.
Yeah.
If I can get a big curve in somewhere, that's where I hit that like kind of meditative state.
Yeah. And I did a workshop where instead of doing the lines, we just got all the papers and it was sort of getting angry with the felt tips and just going and creating, and you know, because that's still creating a texture, and it was a really nice way of like de-stressing. So yeah, that was really nice. So there's like a messy version you can do as well. I mean, it's whatever you want. I quite like using this newspaper paper as well, because I think it's quite interesting when you think about everyday materials and don't think of them as newspapers, but think, okay, that paper's quite light, that's quite easy to tear. And I kind of quite like that material investigation. So what I've done here is I've just got 4 pieces. And I'm just going to staple it right in the middle. So what I might do is place that there, maybe some tape. And I'm just going to sort of like make a square. Can you see like that?
Yeah.
I'll reveal why later. Let me just staple that. So just staple that in 2 places, like that. And then we're going to do, well, I was talking about messy earlier. Why don't we do messy now? So just all over. And then where we've got this kind of like square in the center, we're just going to get some scissors and we're just going to cut towards that square. And create a sort of weird kind of feathery object, I suppose. And you could layer this up. You could have 7 different papers. And once you start cutting, you'll find that it gets harder, but you're creating more texture. And then you just want to do sort of just play with it a little bit and just sort of let it sort of become sort of 3D. I mean, you could have like one on the other side and you could have that suspended, maybe, if you wanted to sort of, you could do a mobile. Anyway, right. So I'm just going to create some paper to attach this to the main collage. So I've just cut 2 strips. And I'm just going to so when you're sort of putting collage, it doesn't, you know, I think it's really good not to think in a 2D sort of way. Every element can be suspended in a different way, or it could be mounted with like a bit of cardboard underneath, so you're creating some height. That's always really nice, and it gives you a different way of looking at things. And you're in control of doing that, which is a really lovely kind of feeling. So what I've done with that is just sort of is looped it like this, because I quite like that, the way that's dangling. I might have to staple that as well. And then I'm now going to make a decision about how I attach it to here as well. So I might create a little ridge in between. I don't want to just stick it on top. I want to sort of think about, we're going to think outside the box or outside the square, and we're going to attach this bit of orange and then stick that on the back, and then that gives that a kind of fluidity and a freedom to do its own thing.
So we're just over halfway through. We've got about 10 minutes or so left. I'm amazed at how many decisions I've made already.
Okay, brilliant. I'm sorry, I feel like I'm going so fast, but
No, it's great.
Oh,
okay. So now the next thing is to create some ribbon. So if you just grab different colors and sort of 1 centimeter. I did a brilliant workshop at Hackney School, and we just did it in a day. We did a 5 meter long oversized garland with 20 students, and it was really amazing what they all achieved. And there was sort of like a bit like this, sort of sort of fringing, but loads of this. We did like 5 meters of it. It was really sorry. And then they all had to play with it in the playground. They took it to the playground and started using it. And then there were some really adventurous children that started using it in a playful way and started making wigs. So like a paper fringing wig. And so that was really interesting. And then some children added sticks to them. So, you know, like a Chinese dragon.
Mm.
So they created that kind of idea. And so it became like a theatre prop.
That kind of possibility when you don't start out with a fixed idea
Yeah.
is, I mean, it's thrilling, isn't it, actually?
Yeah. And also, I think it really challenges you as a person. I think we all have a little bit of OCD in us, where we need to know what's going on, or we need to be in control of some things. So it's really good for my spirit and my aura to be challenged and think. So what we've got here is a ribbon that we've just made out of lots of different stripes. And what I like to do is just sort of roll it around my hand like this. And then maybe it could be a knot, or maybe we could try again and just see what happens. But you're basically seeing how far you can sort of push it without, well, even if it tears, it's fine. But I'm just going to actually stick a split pin in this and then attach it to the mobile collage, sorry. And the reason why, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I went seeking split pins this afternoon. I know I just couldn't find it. I knew I had them somewhere. And it reminded
What, sorry?
Split pins. What a fabulous thing they are, and in schools how precious they are as currency.
Yeah, they really are, and I use them a lot because so I like moving things around, like here, and seeing you could have a whole collage of different split pins, and you could have like 10 different versions if you photograph them differently. And there's just such a brilliant sense of democracy and freedom just having a split pin. And it's just like, so you could have quite a lot of those just sort of dangling down. So I'm going to do like a plain one now.
We've got about 5 minutes, I think, on the clock.
I'm just going to actually draw on this ribbon.
Do you ever draw on pieces that are movable, and then when you've moved them, they create different patterns? Is that something that you like to do in your work?
So do I draw anything?
So, because you were saying about you really like to draw lines,
Yeah.
but you also quite like the split pins because they allow you to move them. Do you ever draw
Yeah.
lines on anything that you have a split pin through? So when you move it, it changes the patterns of the lines?
Yes, yeah, that's lovely as well. Yeah, to create kind of, I think anything 3D, maybe it's because I'm sort of exploring the whole idea of collage. I want to challenge the medium of the art. And I think a great way of individualizing your collage is by making your base materials specific or unique to you. So that means that you are you're kind of increasing the odds of making something that you've made. Nobody else could have made it. So the patchwork idea helps you realize something unique. And also, if you haven't got big bits of paper, then it's a really easy way of creating bigger pieces. So that's how this is looking at the moment. Kind of.
Oh, wow, that is amazing.
So it's kind of, yeah. I'm really into this kind of like, I don't know, like paper pom-pom maybe. I mean, it'd be great to see how many sheets of paper you could staple before you couldn't staple it. So if you did like 10, like I'm sure it'd become like really, and then you just put some your tape, then you'd create this kind of like funny, not exactly perfect circle, but like paper pom-pom.
I love the idea of that you know, pushing something to the point of collapse.
Yeah.
And feeling safe to do that.
Yeah.
And actually it's what you learn through that process of taking it to beyond the limit.
Yeah.
We don't get the chance to do that in classrooms.
Yeah.
Very often, actually.
Yeah.
The average day doesn't involve anything like that for children.
I love
yeah, and also your materials can be really low tech, like a pair of scissors, a split pin, a stapler, some felt tips, you know, napkin receipts. It's available to us all. And I definitely find it quite therapeutic, I think. And then you could start sort of thinking about how you can display it in a couple of different ways, maybe as well. And because you've got this sort of movable action at the top. I mean, people have camera phones, so you can photograph it in like 6 different ways, maybe, and just sort of see. I did something with my goddaughter once. She just thought, well, it's obviously a badge. And I was like, okay, cool, it could be a badge. So that's kind of nice, or it could be a necklace, or it could be a hat.
The kind of the what if and
I like the hat.
what could this be? Again, that's fabulous, isn't it?
Yeah. But I mean, yeah.
So when I was delivering a workshop not so long ago with an artist, we were asking the learners to make coral reef, and one of the learners was like, no, I'm going to make a submarine. And you know what? That is absolutely fine.
Yeah.
Make a submarine.
Yeah.
You go ahead. I'm here to support you.
Yeah.
Tell me what you need. And I love being able to do that as well. Just being like, yeah, why not? Like, it's a sea themed thing.
But it's brilliant that you allowed them to do that, because quite often they're not, if they say that.
Yeah, I think like come towards the end of my like time as a teacher in the classroom, one of the things I found really heartbreaking was I was trying to teach, it was a year 7, how to make monster cushions, and one of the students was just like, I really want to make a speedboat that works. I want to make a working speedboat. I saw it in a different school as part of technology, and I've decided that that's what I want to do, and I couldn't give him the freedom to actually explore what that was. And it made me really sad, because I was just like, I'm really sorry, you have to make a monster cushion, even though I love the idea of you making a speedboat.
Yeah, and then he had the confidence to speak up and say, that's, this is what I'd like to do.
Yeah, it was a sad moment for me. It was a sad moment, but
I wonder if I can invite Rose and Florian to unmute your mics. And because I've got a couple of questions, and I know I've got a couple coming through, and it'd be quite nice if everyone we could carry on with our make and reflect at the same time. But I'm really struck by notions of safety and risk and failure and freedom and the boundless possibilities of this kind of approach, which is actually not what we see in so many schools, and not even in creative subjects. There are so many restrictions on learning, and as I say, I think the average child's day has got more constraint in it than it has freedom, for sure, when they're at school. So just thinking about, we talked earlier about working to reform the curriculum in education, and I guess everyone sitting in this room, this Zoom room today, would agree that this is a good place to start if we want to have curriculum reform. How can we advocate for this? Who do we need to convince of the benefits of a playful pedagogy? Who are the advocates, and how do we reach them?
Wouldn't it be wonderful to do this kind of activity with a member of parliament, with members of parliament? Sit them down in front of a lump of clay or collaging materials and say, you've got 2 hours where you're not allowed to look at your phone, you cannot leave this room, and I want you to have a go at making. That would be my dream. Hold them hostage with a making activity.
Oh, fabulous. Rose, could we take you to 10 Downing Street, perhaps?
Love to, yeah. Along with Florian as well.
Absolutely. And Florian, thinking about this notion of advocacy and allies when we're thinking about curriculum change, who are they? Who do we need to convince?
It's a really interesting question that, whilst I was at Policy Connect, we kind of often talked about, and there's such a wide network of people. I think fundamentally you need buy-in from parents, because any reform that a government wants to undertake, especially around education, they don't want it to backfire, or they don't want it to not go down well with the parents of the young people that they're obviously making decisions for. So they're a key stakeholder group. But then within the policy world, you've obviously got the Minister as Secretary of State for Education, Department for Education, the work that they're doing at the moment. So the civil servants who work in there, the accompanying select committee of members of Parliament who are also scrutinising and holding that particular department and Secretary of State to account. But then we also often forget about the MPs who filter their way up. So who might start out as a backbench minister, who we've had loads who've previously been chairs of APPGs who previously worked with us on our work and then have gone on to become ministers further down their political careers. I think the challenge around advocacy and reform to chasing curriculum is that we've got such a rigid perception of what it should look like at the moment, and people often cite that it hasn't changed in almost 100 years, and it hasn't. So actually what you need is a new view within government and within parliament to really look at the curriculum isn't necessarily fit for purpose as it stands, and actually to take it apart and rebuild it is a massive undertaking. And I think the work of the various councils, so Arts, Design, Crafts Council, CHEED, are obviously doing loads of that stuff in higher education. The various teacher unions are obviously doing quite a bit. Design and Technology Association data, Tony Rotten and his team are doing a lot at the moment about how we can turn around pupil uptake in design and technology subjects as it stands at the moment. They recently published a report that shows some really quite scary stats about the uptake of students going into design and technology, and that is declining quite rapidly. So the advocacy work is twofold. It's that network of engagement with the teachers, with unions, with members of parliament, government, civil servants, etc., but also designers and industry, because the new angle that I don't think we've had before when talking about creative arts within school curriculum is that we're now talking about skills for the future and the challenges around industries finding people with the right transferable skills, not just the sort of practical theoretical knowledge. And that comes from giving people an opportunity to develop the skills in these types of contexts. So actually that's an advantage that the creative arts subjects have over other subjects in schools, because they are the ones that are helping to develop those types of abilities within young people. So that's a new and fresh argument. I think that's kind of helping the case along. There's definitely a long way to go.
Yeah, I would agree with Florian. Starts with the parents, and again, what Beta is doing. Also, IET are really pushing to get the curriculum changed. With there's a new thing that they're trying to put to the government with trying to bring, talking about the skills gap there, Florian, trying to change the curriculum by putting engineering into key stage into the early years. So that's something that's ongoing. I attended a roundtable event about that, and I think they're going around the country at this moment in time, and hopefully with all the evidence that they've and the ideas, they're going to put that thought to the Prime Minister. Yeah, but for me here, I mean, many people say, well, do you get permission to, if something comes in, I just present it to the girls and I just let them, have free reign. I never ask for permission to run any kind of activities here. I just go in, and of course, if anything comes of it, then it gets taken up to the head teacher. This is what we've done. And of course, that's how we deal with it. But I never ask any permission to run any activities. But yeah, it does come down to, again, the parents, that you have to start them when they're young. I think the curriculum does need a bit of a shake-up, to be honest.
I think you're my hero, Rose. Don't ask permission, just do it.
I do, yeah.
Well,
consequences afterwards.
shall we take that as the key learning of the afternoon? Don't ask for permission. Just make.
Yeah.
I'm looking at a beautiful thing before us that Liaqat has made.
Wow, that's brilliant.
Yeah, I'm a bit ashamed of mine by comparison, but I'm proud and delighted.
That's fantastic.
Brilliant.
Oh,
I love
yours,
them.
Rebecca, that's so beautiful and big. Mine's a bit small.
Yeah, lovely.
Well done, guys. I love them.
Thank you so much. And I think this is vital, this work. I mean, it seriously is. We are talking about a generation that are being disembodied in their learning in every sense. Yeah. And we've heard today about, you know, what can be achieved for young people in terms of their education, turbocharging it into their future ambitions and aspirations, but also at the very level of slowing down, meditating, and entering that making space, mental space. And you've given us a little bit of time to do that this afternoon, Liaqat. I just can't thank you all enough. Let's take it forward. Let's think about who we want to influence, and let's do that. And let's ask ourselves, when in doubt, what would Miss Russell do? Thanks to you all. We will be sharing this recording far and wide, and obviously we'll be sharing it with you guys. Just remains for me to say to everybody, please do join us for the remaining sessions of conference. You can catch recordings on demand, but we are meeting in person on the afternoon of the 9th of July, the National Gallery, for our summer social. So, hey, you could pop down to the Crafts Council first, go and see Yinka's Challenge, and then come on down for cake, tea, and something a bit stronger down at the National Gallery with NSCAD. We'd love to see you. Thanks all. It was good to let the making do the talking. Have a wonderful weekend when it arrives, and we'll see you all soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Everyone.